Welcome once again to another meeting with Piotr Ignacek on the topic of onboarding. Today I think we'll touch on some more practical aspects related to how this platform operates, since you are its co-creator and you really know what the needs are and how they have been addressed in the system. So what would you suggest to start with?
Maybe I'll start by referring to our previous meeting about the problems and how we addressed them. The first problem was that there were very few so-called onboarding paths which are connected to the implementation process. In other words, some clients are unable to organize this for themselves. We have a methodology with which we guide the client step by step, helping them organize the entire implementation process.
So most clients who come to us with such a process don't really have a prepared action plan for how they want to proceed.
Usually the first meeting is about needs and problems, pain points depending on the situation, and the second is consultative, how to create the entire process. And that's the first step. For this, we create so-called implementation paths, meaning an implementation path is a set of tasks that an employee who is onboarding into the organization needs to complete on a specific day. This could be a task for day 1, 3, or 5, depending on the complexity. And there can be 3, 5, or even 30 days. It's different every time.
And who creates this substantive content? Do you help with that, or do clients have to prepare all the content themselves? How is it supposed to look?
The thing is, large organizations, like the corporations we've worked with, have this more or less organized, actually even more than just organized. Our role is to point out those niches or things they might not notice, but which could lead to increased or decreased efficiency and risks. But a very large number of clients simply don't have this written down. It's somewhere in the minds of the management or in HR. We help consolidate it during consultations that last from 4 to 8 hours. We map it out, show how it can function, and based on that, we develop an implementation path.
What can such an implementation path include?
The term implementation path sounds interesting, actually. Kind of like a health path. Well, in a way, that's more or less what it looks like. So yes, in the implementation path, we have tasks for the employee to complete. For example, it could be picking up some equipment. We mentioned the factory, so it could be picking up equipment. It could be picking up a computer. We have an electronic signature, so the employee doesn't have to go anywhere. They just sign electronically. They simply confirm electronically that they've received it. Another task could be training, for example, health and safety training, for instance. He has to mark that he has completed it. There could also be training related to work standards. And now what we did was connect the onboarding platform with micro-learning. That is what worked for us in large organizations. Not full learning platforms, but micro-learning. So education continues, and now pay attention. From 1.5 minutes to 7 minutes.
And I guess that's already adapted to the way people perceive and absorb information online, remotely, right? So that it's not too long, because our employee needs to grasp it and possibly prepare for a test. So after this knowledge stage, there's something that checks whether they've actually absorbed it.
In the onboarding path, we have not only tasks to complete and confirm. So that, for example, the buddy or whoever is managing the process knows that the employee has done it, but we can also conduct a quiz or a knowledge test for each task. Thanks to this, we have 2 indicators. Not only that the employee has completed it, but also whether, for example, they actually learned something from the training, meaning, for example, whether they mastered the knowledge. We talked about those manuals. Who checked that? Right. You would make 10 questions.
On the last page of the instructions, it said what you were supposed to do.
And here we can assign such an indicator to each task, meaning whether it was completed. Additionally, one of our clients gave us a task to determine whether it was completed on time. So for example, if this task was supposed to be completed on Tuesday, then whether it was completed on Tuesday, okay, or to put it another way, whether this task was completed in the order it was supposed to be assigned, meaning the order of tasks being carried out, and we are also able to monitor that. So we have whether it was done on time, whether it was done in the right order, and we have the quality of the task's completion.
So as part of such onboarding, you could define that there is a process in which when a client returns, the employee receives certain training and information that they must complete, whether formally, because of course we have health and safety obligations, and we also have things related to issuing equipment or more generally, work tools, let's put it that way. And we also verify whether they have absorbed this knowledge enough to get started, to start work or move on to the next stage.
It's good that you mentioned this because some clients back in the day had a tendency to just check things off. Done, 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 done. There was no real check on effectiveness, whether they did it consciously, thoughtfully, or what the results were. Because we also have a feature that not only allows us to arrange these tasks in the onboarding path step by step, we can also assign a specific day to each of them. So, for example, we can set Wednesday and Friday. We can simply assign tasks. We can also implement, for example, a module where if an employee fails the knowledge test, they have to complete the task again.
But will that task be exactly the same in content, or can we differentiate it? Because after all, by making a mistake, I might be able to anticipate the next task.
You're clever. If we set up the tasks so that each subsequent task has to be different, it becomes more difficult for the employee. But we can also do it in a simple way, for example, by changing the form of the questions. So it doesn't have to be a different task, it can be the same task, but we just change the possible answers. Single choice, multiple choice, we have a very extensive survey and test module. This is so we can constantly monitor what's happening.
Let's try, maybe we have enough time to discuss the next stage of this onboarding process. So now we have an employee who has gone through the entire onboarding path, completed it and passed the exam. And what happens next? What else can happen in this procedure when it comes to the employee on such a platform?
Let me just clarify so everyone is on the same page. The employee is just one part, so to speak, one branch of this implementation process. We have what's called a buddy, meaning a friend who helps the employee get settled in. We have the employee supervisor, and all of them see the same thing. So, for example, if one of the tasks is a meeting with the boss, the employee has to click in the app to confirm the meeting has taken place. For example, they can make a note from that meeting, but the boss also has to check off the same task. In other words, confirm that the meeting took place. Because there's an analytics module that allows you to verify not only that the employee did everything, but also whether the people who were supposed to cooperate with them did their part as well.
Okay, so it's also about the involvement of the people responsible for onboarding, so that it doesn't happen that the so-called buddy doesn't actually introduce me, just gives me the tool and says, figure it out yourself, right? That's good too, because sometimes cooperation between employees at the same level can be disrupted by various concerns.
Also, one of the elements involved is the so-called feedback survey. The idea is that if, for example, an employee gives feedback every week, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they did, what they didn't do, what they consider unnecessary, for instance, then the process remains dynamic and alive. So we simply have feedback on how to improve it.
Exactly, and that's also a great aspect because we're constantly refining our onboarding process. Okay, Piotr, I think we should try to discuss these issues related to the process at later stages in our next meeting so that we have enough time. Unless you'd like to add something else on this topic.
There are still 7 other functionalities, but I know the listener's attention span might not handle it, so it's better to save that for other meetings.
So let's try to meet again and discuss the next.
Just for a summary, we have implementation paths, we have files that can be installed, ones that need to be read, and we have the option for micro and e-learning trainings, knowledge pills that we can install. Well, that's natural. All applications have it now, meaning import, export, yes, of the entire user database, so there's no need to mention it anymore because it's just there. Exactly. And thanks to you, well, artificial intelligence will also do a lot of work here.
I hope so. Well then, we invite you to the next meeting.
Thanks. Thank you very much.